you'll see it.
Yeah.
All systems go. Clear for liftoff.
What is going on, everyone? This is Sheets, and for those that were following my Survivor content the last year and a half or whatever, you might have you've noticed like it's a little different vibe. You know, it wasn't quite as exciting, wasn't quite as in depth. It just something was missing. And for those of you who've seen me in the several years before that, you'll realize why is that we were missing Brave Jayhawk. And for those that don't know or don't remember, I know Mike a long time, all the way back in the 2+2 days. When we were talking about Survivor over there, and for a couple of years we were doing content for both Survivor football and for March Madness, and he took a little bit of a break, and we almost got back to do some football this year, but he says, you know what, I'll definitely do March Madness. So I'm like, you know what, let's fire it up. So I want to welcome here just to Mike, just to kind of tell you what's going on here. So I'm co-streaming this over different
platforms. I didn't realize we're live. Can you send me a link so I can send it out really quick?
You could just retweet mine, I guess. I tweet. I don't exactly know how to post the link. It's on my X account. That's probably the best way to view it live. But worst case, I'll definitely have a video, a link for you to send the recording out. I don't know exactly how to tweet it out from here. You'd have to like follow me on X to do that. So I mean, yeah, to actually that'll answer this question. So where this is being streamed right now is I do have this thing with Ship It Nation where I do like pool stuff for them. So I'm on their YouTube channel, but I'm also on my own YouTube channel, my Sheets 4444 YouTube channel, live there. Also live on my Twitch, which is Sheets Pwns, SHEETSPWNS. Also my own X channel, which is Sheets PWNS also. And then there will be a recording of this, which we'll put up there like kind of forever, you know. So that's what we're kind of up to. So what we're going to do, and let me catch Mike up for a second. And one of the reasons I really wanted to encourage him to get back into this is it's a real cool sweet spot now, Mike. I mean, like it's a great combination of there being, number one, just a shit ton of action because of all the splashes going on, and yet still, you know, the level of play is not great. It's kind of like poker back when like 2006, you know, where you had this combination of there being action and it being sort of soft. You know, most of the time you can't have both. Most of the time it's super soft because no one's playing yet. You know what I mean? There's no action. And a lot of the time there's a ton of action because everybody's learned how to play. But I thought that last year was going to be kind of sharper for March Madness also, but yet still I found, I don't know if you were following it all last year, but there were still people who literally just didn't even know how to stop themselves from being boxed out. Like even if they had a choice, people were literally boxing themselves out in week 16, in the round of 16, even if they planned it right until then. I mean, they're like, oh, let me just play these two teams. Like, whoops. You know, why? What just happened? What happened is you're an idiot. You know, like, what happened is you just didn't think, you know, and for those of you that are doing this for the first time, I have to give you the plus and the minuses. This is just a ton of fun, okay? And yet, at the same time, it will completely fry your brain, okay? If, in fact, you're playing it right. Brave Jeff might have disappeared for a minute. Or maybe he's coming back. I'm not sure. Hope he's coming back. I'll wait on him for a few minutes while I talk about this. He disappeared on me. Hold on to see something. Let's see, come back. I think he disappeared for just a second. But what I will say is that it will completely fry your brain. Okay. If you're playing this right, you'll think about, okay, if I play this, then I can't play that. If I can't play this, then I have to play that. If I play this team in the East, then I can't play that team in the West. And then if I play that team in the West, I can't play this team in the Midwest. And I promise you that by the time you're done with these pools, you are going to need a break. Okay. And if you go back to any of our old content, you'll see why that is so. So I guess what I'm going to do is first talk about why this is similar to regular Survivor. Wait, here you are. Hold on. I'll let you back in. You're back.
I miss Google Fiber so much. I moved. It's okay.
So I was basically just telling people how like it's a lot of fun, and yet it'll fry your brain and like ruin it forever. And at the very least, if you're playing this right, you'll need a break from your brain for like a couple of weeks after it's over. Okay. So what I was going to do is just kind of talk about how it's a little bit similar to regular Survivor as opposed to not, and then we're just going to get right into it. It's similar in that, you want to pick teams that have good EV, that have low future value, just like Survivor sort of. Like pick teams that have a good chance to win, that hopefully not that many people are playing, and hopefully, you're not going to want to play in the future. And in the purest sense, it's no different than Survivor pool stuff. But it's different in a couple of ways. Number one is the bracketology and the puzzle pieces make it very unique. And we talked about this when I did the playoff pools for the NFL. It's not enough to pick teams that that are good, that you want to use in the future. You have to make sure that you have a path to the end. And when teams you end up picking play one another, it puts a lot of pressure on you. And if they play each other too late in the tournament, you're going to be already dead. So you have to kind of consider that. And the other thing I would say that's a little bit different is that if one of the advantages of using a team, it's okay. Number one is that, yes, you don't have to use them again, but that's not enough. It's not that you can't use them again. It's you also have to make sure that they lose anyway in the future. It's not just that you can use them again. You have an active role against them, which is a little different than regular Survivor. If I use Chiefs in week 1, that doesn't mean that like necessarily I need them to lose week 2, 3, 4, and 5. Where in this case it does. So that is very different. Why don't you give a couple of like, I don't know, kind of general things, and then we'll kind of get into it, maybe.
Yeah. So we spoke about this a little bit before getting on. I'm sure that you highlighted this. The closer you get to thinking you have this thing figured out, suddenly you realize you're just confused, lost, and you're further away from figuring it out than you were to begin with. And that doesn't really make sense, but once you really dive into it, that rambled sentence starts to make sense. Because in this format, the results of the other games almost matter as much as the results of the games that you pick yourself. And that's even more so true the deeper into the tournament that we get. If the wrong teams are winning, then you will eventually be boxed out. The other results matter that much, not just your games, but the other games. You could win the first 8 or 9 games in this thing and then have 0 picks the rest of the way, because the teams that you picked beat the other teams and you have no one else to pick, since you can only use each team once. And that's what I think the biggest difference is between March Madness, Survivor, and NFL, is that when you pick a team, not only you need them to lose. If they go too far into the tournament, you're either going to have lost picking against them, or you'll be boxed out because you don't have enough teams to pick from anymore.
This is what I want to do. I want to show you one example of something which I think is very important, so that when we reverse engineer what we want to do, you'll understand something. And then what I want to do is I want to go over kind of like the pure plays, like the pure things that you're looking for, and then we'll get into this. So first thing what I want you to do is do me a favor, just to prove this works. Pencil in 2 teams in the final 8 here. Anything you want. You pick one. Do you have your spreadsheet here?
Yeah.
Just throw 2 teams.
What quadrant? Matter what quadrant?
Anywhere. Top left, where I have them. Just any 2 you want. Did you type it in or no?
No, I typed in the wrong one. Sorry. I have 2 open.
Okay. Yeah. Is that the final 8? Yeah, Duke versus UConn. Okay, fine. So in pretty much all of the pools that we're going to talk about, the rules is that you have to pick a certain amount of teams in round 1, a certain amount in round 2, but we'll get to there. But then when you get to the Elite 8, what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to pick 2 teams to win in the final 8. Okay? You could pick them either one Saturday, one Sunday, both Saturday through Sunday, whatever it is. But you have to pick 2 teams in the final 8. Okay?
And that is the maroon and the blue. The blue teams that winning the Elite 8 games.
Okay, so the point is you have Duke versus Connecticut, right? Okay. So here's something that I want you guys to think about. I want you to, first of all, you got to presume that that to win this thing, you got to get all the way to the end. Okay, that's for sure. So I want you guys to think about something. Let's say that Duke and UConn, as Mike has put it here, they're in the final 8, okay? And let's say that you have picked both Duke and Connecticut at some point. Not round 1, not round 2, not round 3, but let's say that you played both Duke and Connecticut at some point in this tournament. So here's the thing that I want you guys to all conceptualize and understand. If you have picked 2 teams that are playing each other in the final 8, you are already dead, okay? And it's important to understand why that is, all right? And then we can go backwards. The reason why that is, as I mentioned before, you have to pick 2 teams in the final 8 to get to the final 4, okay? So if you're going to want to make a final 4 pick and then like a winner in the finals, that final 4 has got to come from 2 teams that you pick to get there and 2 teams that you avoid, okay? So 2 teams that you pick to get there and 2 you have to avoid. So if you've already used 2 teams that are playing each other in the final 8, you're already dead because, number 1, you can't pick from either of these guys to get there, okay? And here you're already giving one up in the final 4. You know what I mean? So the point is that if you already picked 2 teams that are in the final 8 playing against each other, you're already dead. So if you know that, when you go backwards into your plan, that's how important it is to use some geography and and try to avoid this death spiral. Okay. Now sometimes again you can't help it, right? Not you can't help it, but sometimes again this could happen by accident. In other words, let's say I picked Duke in week 1, then I forgot about him, right? And then I picked UConn over here. Then you're like, uh-oh. And the next thing you know, this happened. But this is the situation that you need to avoid. Okay? Yeah,
this goes back. I said that the other games almost matter just as much as the games that you picked. This scenario, it would be self-inflicted to put yourself in this situation. But, if you pick a 10 seed and an 8 seed in the first round from quadrant 1, if they both make the Elite 8, then you would be boxed out. But, that's a forgivable mistake. I mean, who would have thought a 10 seed would play an 8 seed in the Elite 8? But that goes back to what I said earlier, was that the other results matter just as much. You don't have control over those results, but you do have control over putting yourself in a position that you don't need as many things to happen to avoid being boxed out.
Now here is what I'm going to set up. Now again, I'm going to talk about kind of pure March Madness survivor theory. In other words, like if I were explaining to a very, very smart person, okay, how this is supposed to be played in purity, how you're supposed to play. In other words, this is the equivalent of me describing Survivor NFL the following way. Let's say I was describing someone to how to play Survivor NFL. I would say, you know, what you need to do is pick teams that have good winning chances that you are going to not want to use in the future. And that's a very nice, pure way to describe what Survivor pools are. And then you get more advanced, and you can talk about, you know, like which teams are going to be too popular in the future, which means that you probably don't want to worry about using them in the future. But that's for later. So when it comes to planning a pure March Madness strategy, what I would tell somebody is this. Okay, what you need to do is find teams that are favored to win really early and then favored to get knocked out as soon as possible. Okay, so in the purest form, now this doesn't exist, but if you found a team that was like 99% to win round one and 1% to win round two, okay, that would be the purest play that there is, you know, because you win and then you don't worry about them, okay? Now, to further make it pure, what you probably want to do is pick teams from all over the regions, okay? So you have less problems and less worries about by accident running into each other too early. So again, in purity, I want to find teams with huge winning chances in round one that was probably not going to win round two, and probably take one from like all the way in the top left and one from all the way on the bottom right. And if I have to take two more, take one from all the way on the top right and one all the way from the bottom left. And then once you get through to week after round two, believe it or not, your plays are almost going to be almost forced. so don't worry about it. But that's like the purest form of how you're supposed to play these things. So if I explain to like my son, who's now really smart like this, you know what he would probably do, which is probably what you should do? You go to the win odds, right? You go into the DraftKings or however, and there are plenty of sites that do this for you, and say, okay, who's favored to win? And you make a list of, okay, these guys look at, you know, a good favorite to win. But then you think, well, okay, I can find teams that are favored to win, but they're probably going to win in the future. How about teams that are going to be facing someone really good, like in the second round, you know? So like, again, without even looking at who the teams are, maybe like an 8 seed or something like that, like somebody who might be a favorite to win in the first game, and maybe a good 8 seed who's going to get knocked down against the 1. All right, yeah, that certainly makes a lot of sense. So how do I know that? Well, one thing you could do is you could go to the sportsbook odds and say, okay, let's see if I can find out odds on what teams are likely to make the Sweet 16, for example, you know, and you can make a list of those. And I've done some of that for you, actually, which I'll show you that spreadsheet in a minute. So again, if you're trying to think out from a purity perspective what teams you're going to want, you could say, okay, I want a team that's a big favorite in the first round, but according to the sports books, have a very low chance of making it to the Sweet 16. So those are going to be your pure survivor plays. Now we're going to get, you know, the reality is that, oh, sounds great. So probably a lot of people are going to do that. And yeah, now we're having fun. You know what I mean? Like, so now we got to think about, you know, where popularity comes in and things like that. So like there are pure ways to play, but those are going to be, you know, somewhat owned by people that sort of know what they're doing. And one of the things I love talking about this with no, I was going to say one of the reasons
plays that you're referring to now that we want to look for. What's Joe home game going to do? What are the chalk plays going to be? Yeah. And what is the best approach for going against the grain versus those strategies?
And one of the things that Michael is really, really good. Well, I say good, but he's very unique at is he does not play. Number one, he doesn't play the way I play usually, and number two, He doesn't play the way that well, I shouldn't say he doesn't want to play a lot of people play. He intentionally doesn't play a lot of people play. Like he knows how people are going to play and say, you know what? And I don't want to step on his toes. I know this is what he's going to say. Is his goal is not to get to the end. His goal is that when he gets to the end, to make the most money when they get there. You know what I mean? It's hard enough to get there, but if you're going to get there, let's try to take down the whole freaking cheese. And let's try to make some kind of unique pass. Does that make sense?
Yeah, especially in this format where it's very, very difficult to outright win a pool of even 1,000 people. It's people get wedged onto or forced onto the same route, and there's not very many unique paths that can be found in this because your picks be forced. There aren't nearly as many decisions than there would be in the first day alone. There's less decision making, I think, with 16 teams left than there is on just the first day being Thursday. I think that's harder to decide which route you're going to take than 16 on out.
Why don't you go through what this spreadsheet is and the colors and stuff like that, and then after that, we'll get into some of the chalk plays, like the obvious pure plays, and then we'll talk about strategies.
So I'm an intuitive player. I'm not a math-based player. I had to visualize this, and the only way to visualize it is, well, there we go. Here's a Google Sheets with color coordination for each day of the tournament. The keys there in the middle. This is very important. The rules of most pools are you pick one team per day without only using each team once, with the caveat that when you get to the 7th and the 8th day, that's the Elite 8 going down to the Final 4. You can pick one game from Saturday, one from Sunday, or you can pick two from the same day. So the colors are important because if you're just looking at ESPN.com and on what days these games are, it's very easy to make a mistake where you end up taking teams on the first and the second rounds that end up playing each other before you would like them to. And you limit if it plays out if it doesn't play out that way, you're out. And if it plays out that way, then you have one less team to choose from and you increase your chances of boxing yourself out. That's not to say that you might not want to use that strategy, because I'm going to be using that strategy for a few of my entries to create some insane separation, creating a very narrow path, but one that I feel that could be very unique. But the color coordination, I would advise everyone to use something like this, because you want to know who your teams are playing and on what days later on in the tournament.
Well, here's an interesting, weird thing about the NCAA, which we talked about beforehand. And every year this happens. I don't know why they do it this way, but it's definitely a lot more fun for Survivor. So what you would think is the following. Okay, teams that play Thursday play each other on Saturday, right? And then those guys all play each other the following Thursday. And then the people who play on Friday play each other on Sunday. And all the winners play each other the following Friday. No, it doesn't necessarily work that way. But
you know why they can't do that, right?
Right. Because sometimes the Thursday plays the Friday winner.
It's the pod system that they adopted, 10-ish years ago, whenever it was.
Yeah. So like here, for example, I mean, like you see like two oranges in like the round of 16. So that makes sense. In other words, those are Saturdays. So two teams that played each other Thursday, or two rounds of 4, they all play each other on Saturday. But here you have these two teams Fridays, they do play each other Sunday, right? And these two Thursdays do play Saturdays. But you have to, like you said, you have to you have to make sure you know who's playing when, because this has gotten me before, and I didn't pay attention. I ended up having two teams playing each other again, not so I was dead, but sooner than I would have liked. So that's what this is like. Now, one other thing before we get into some of these picks is, okay, number one, again, all pools are different, but like the two main pools are either you're going to pick one pick round one or day one, day two, or two picks day one, day two, depending on how enormous the tournament is. But one subtlety that is going to depend on what type of pool you're in is when your picks lock, right? Why don't you talk a little bit about that, Mike?
So I'm taking it pretty easy this year, just doing one pool with a friend where I take the lead on the picks. But my favorite pool that creates the most possible EV is the one in which picks they don't lock when the first game starts. They lock when each game starts. So if you want to pick the third game of the day, you don't have to pick that until before the third game starts on that day, not before the first game starts. And here's how that's very relevant. I foresaw this and got into a pool specifically to hope something like this would happen. And then it happened. We didn't win, but we found ourselves in a very favorable position. It was a few years ago. It was quadrant one on the top left. That was the year that Florida Atlantic made the Final Four, the Elite Eight, the Final Four, and then Princeton made the Sweet 16 from the first quadrant. So what happened that year was San Diego State was a very chalky pick as a 4 or 5 seed in the first round in quadrant one, and they were on track to play Alabama in the third round. So they played Alabama on Saturday morning. It was the first game. And the reason this was very relevant is if San Diego State won, then if you already used San Diego State, you could not take Creighton to beat Princeton. Because if you did that, then you would find yourself having already used San Diego State and Creighton in quadrant one. So what ended up happening is San Diego State defeated Alabama. And even though you could change your pick, like 25 people out of 150 did not. And they picked Creighton to beat the 15 seed Princeton without realizing that they had already taken San Diego State, and San Diego State had already beaten Alabama. And Creighton won, but now they don't have anyone to pick from in quadrant one, getting from the Elite Eight to the Final Four. So that's a really unique format where the picks are due before each tip, because you can use the results of the early games on each day to decide what you feel the best pick would be given that information. And some people are going to make their pick and not go back and reconsider. So if you are willing to reconsider, then you can create a lot of extra EV by taking it game by game. Otherwise, all you have is the information. There's an upset on Thursday, a big upset. You should look at how that affects what your strategy is for your Friday pick. You might want to change your pick if something wild happens on the first day, because it could very well change what your intended strategy is for your Friday picks.
So this is what we're going to do. We're going to go day by day. We're going to start with Thursday. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give a couple of kind of like moto picks, like master of the obvious picks. And not that they're bad picks, but they're just kind of low risk, and they're just kind of like a lot of people are going to play them, and they're very pure, and they make a lot of sense to show you what they are. And then I'm going to talk about like some higher risk plays, things that I think I'm going to want to do. So what we're looking at right here, and I'm going to put the spreadsheet up in a minute. This is kind of a grid that I created where I rated teams by a couple of metrics. Number one, by their round one win percentage, and these are just some contenders. I don't like teams I'm never going to play, like Duke and whatever it is. And there's some matchups that aren't even set yet, so I can't deal with Florida and Michigan quite yet, whatever. But the idea is that I have these teams rated by round one win percentage, and then also by the percent chance that they reach the Sweet 16. And then this kind of like cool little column over here, the percent chance they win exactly one game. Okay, the chance that they win then lose. Okay, which is a very interesting metric that you can deal with. So if you think about the things that I discussed already, okay, this is by day. To me, there are two, I guess, obvious type plays that are showing up on the Thursday. And one is going to be Nebraska. Okay, Nebraska is a big favorite against Troy. They're about between 85 and 90% to win. And given current metrics, they're favored to lose their next game against Vanderbilt. I mean, I have them at a 40% chance in total, right, to reach the Sweet 16. So when you have 88% winning chances and then you're favored to lose the next game, that to me is a very, very obvious and very pure type pick. Now, some of the sites, like Pool Genius, a lot of them, they actually give like some ownership projections and stuff. And not surprisingly, like Nebraska, I believe, is going to be one of the top, if not the top, owned team out there. And listen, we can get into
this. I sure hope so.
Yeah, and we could get in. We could get into, is it for good reason or whatever it is. But this is the play that, again, your guy that just learned how to play March Madness Survivor is just going to want to do. Why not, right? Good winning chances, favored to lose, okay? And whatever. That's one for Thursday. The other one I think I had for Thursday that was kind of an obvious sort of one is I think people are going to go to Arkansas to some degree again. It's got a nice little mix of safety, 90% or so winning chances, and then only a 58% chance, as far as I'm looking at, to reach the Sweet 16. So I think those two are, listen, you're in low risk, whatever. I think all those things are pretty reasonable. Okay. And I can't really argue against them, except for the fact that if you're playing big pools, you got to search for leverage somewhere, and if you got two high owned spots, it's usually a good idea to try to save them. So those are, I think, going to be the two pure plays. And I'll tell you, I think I have some good ones for like aggressive plays. And again, you're going to have to hold your nose for some of these, but I like Ohio State quite a bit. I mean, they're only 63% winning chance, whatever. But if they lose, not only they're only 11% to reach the Sweet 16, but also like 5% to reach the Elite Eight. You know what I mean? Like, so you're not worried about it. And I have them as very, very high win exactly one winning chance. So I think that's a very, very strong play. The other couple of others.
What everyone has to remember.
What's that?
What everyone has to remember here is that it's not about winning that game. It's about winning not just that game, but the next game, the next game, the next game. You have to win every game. So this is very different than NFL Survivor Pool in that. In NFL Survivor Pool, you could win it in week 13. You can win in week 7. In this thing, you're not winning it until the absolute earliest, the final four. That would take some absolute miracles, and you would have to take some huge chances with some crazy thing, absolutely wild, crazy things happening. So when you're considering taking a 2.5 point favorite, don't dismiss it, because in the end, you're going to have to win the next game too. And as Sheets pointed out, think of it as a 2-team parlay and those win odds as a pair, as a win and a loss. Don't think of it as, because if you take a 14-point favorite Kansas in the first round,
that's Friday. That's Friday. We're getting there. Yeah.
So either you're going to take, Kansas is a huge favorite, but they're also going to be coin flipping the second game. Ohio State winning than losing is just as likely, or even more so, than Kansas winning than losing. It's really the same thing.
And so Georgia, I like that. And the third I'll give you for now is another pretty, only this is very thematic. Again, you got to have to just kind of close your eyes here a little bit, but play the alma mater, play the theme song. But St. Mary's Gales at a full 56% winning chance. If God forbid we get away with it, we're in good shape. So that's the way I think I'm going to play a lot of my pools this year. Is to me, there are two ways to really play. Number one, and you've done this in the past, I'm worried if you do this in the future, is to actually go contrarian and play like the 1 seed in like the first round or something like that, because no one's doing it. Or you go and play some like horrible, like 55% winning chance team like I'm going to do. I think if you go the chalkier route, like the Nebraskas and the Kansases and the Arkansas, I think you're putting yourself on too easy a path. What do you think about Thursday?
So the way I approach this is I pencil in who I want to go deep based on what I think people are going to take in the first round. And one thing really stuck out to me when I looked at – I've watched almost no college basketball this year. I've watched a handful of my alma mater, St. Mary's in Kansas this year, but I haven't watched any of these other teams play, which doesn't make a difference when it comes to playing this. I'm looking at these point spreads, and they're absolutely enormous. Obviously, very NL driven. These 5 and 4 seed point spreads, they've never been this high ever. I mean, I don't even need to look it up. There's no way 11.5, 14, 11.5, 13, 10.5, 15.5, 7.5, 13.5. I mean, those are enormous point spreads. The chalk is going to be on those teams on Thursday and Friday. And I'm going to be absolutely nowhere near those teams. I'm going to take literally 0 of them, which makes my strategy very obvious what I'm hoping happens. But that's just where I think everyone's going to go. And if I think everyone's going to go there, then I'm going to go somewhere else. And but there's multiple ways to go. I can go the 8, 9 seeds like you're probably going to go, or I can go the 1 seeds. I can do a combination of the 1 seeds and the 8 or the 9s. I can also go the bottom half, like the 2s or the 6s. But I want to win as big of a piece of the pie as possible, or be out and enjoy the rest of the tournament. So as long as one of my 2 teams is still in, otherwise I don't care. And I don't want to be anywhere near a multi-hundred way chop, and that's going to happen if I play it to where I want the Duke, Arizona, Michigan teams making the Final Four. If they make it, I will not be in. I will no longer be in, and I'll be completely fine with that.
The other thing that to think about,
and I think the chalk on the 4 and 5 seeds, without a doubt.
The other thing to think about is that what you're hearing a lot of this year is the following. You're hearing that, wow, last year, like all the chalk came on in, and this year, like you just mentioned, like NIL, and there's this big separation, and that I just read an article the other day that the separation between the top 3 teams and the rest is like the highest it's been based on XYZ metric. And to me,
that's incredible.
Well, and to me, you know what that just means? It means that people are going to take more of them. You know what I mean? Like,
those top 3 teams are each favored to make the Final Four. That's incredible.
Yep. But the other thing
is they're favored to make the Final Four.
But the other thing to think about is if you're going to accept that, and if you say, okay, those top teams are like that good, even more so, you want to avoid those 4 and 5s early. You know what I mean? Like you've got to be able to save those teams to use in final 8s. You know what I mean? Like if you want to use those Final Four teams, because otherwise, I'm telling you, you end up like using the teams like the ones and the twos like before you want to when you use those 4s and 5s early. So I think that again it's going to be like you said, it's going to be a short week, whatever it is, and I'll play these 60 percenters because if God forbid they get there, I'm telling you, and you're going to get a unique path, and I think that's a strong way to play. Okay, so we kind of alluded to this team already, like for Friday, but again, like you not flip a coin in the air, but if you ask anybody that just learned how to play March Madness Survivor, you ask anybody that's got a subscription for any of the main sites, you ask my son who's now very, very brilliant and he's able to understand exactly what I've told him. He's going to look at the board. He's going to say, wow, check this out. I got Kansas as a huge favorite, and they're not even favored to win their next round. Let's go. Okay, let's just go take Kansas, make life easy, and we're off to the races. So Kansas is going to be your chalk for Friday. I mean, almost guaranteed. I mean, I can't imagine them being less than 20% owned, okay, for Friday. So in my world, I mean, I'll just put on my Cal Baptist jersey or whatever I have, and I'll root against them. Or, you know what I mean? Like, I'm going to probably avoid that type of thing. For me, for Friday, I have 2 different ways you could go. I mean, again, if you want to be super aggressive, like I think I want to play, I will recommend a couple of 55 percenters. I'll recommend Utah State at 55% winning chances. And I'll also recommend Iowa at 56% winning chances. And if you want a little bit of a safer one, okay, that's, again, not bad to win just one, I'll give you Iowa. And Texas Tech. So Texas Tech will be a little chalkier, but those will be my 3. I would say Utah State, Iowa, and Texas Tech.
Oh, let me jump back in in regards to Kansas. I agree that they will be very chalky on Friday. You're not fading the mindset that you should have. The mindset is you want them. You're saving them, and you're saving them in the sense that you don't ever even need to pick them. You just want them to keep winning if you don't take them. Because if you don't take them, every person did.
Yep.
That if Kansas does make the Elite Eight, they are fully capable of doing so. It's an underdog, but I mean someone's going to make it from there. If it's not Duke, it's slightly less Kansas than it is St. John's. But you would want Kansas to get there because the value of your entry will go up because all the people that got there having already taken Kansas could not take them on that for making the Elite Eight, which means they would have to take somewhere else, and it squeezes more that group of people. Think of it as a subgroup. There's 100 people left, and 25 of them have already taken Kansas. But those 25 people, instead of deciding on one extra game to choose from, they're all deciding between maybe 2 or 3 games rather than 3 or 4. And that means that you could take, I mean, hell, you could take Kansas yourself as an underdog against Duke. It's not as crazy as you think. Or you take someone else and then you free roll Kansas beating Duke. If Kansas beats Duke, the situation's even better. You haven't used Kansas yet. And all those people that advanced now have an Elite Eight team that they've already used that they cannot take. That if they win one more game, they will all be boxed out. So the chalky teams, there's a very big difference between Kansas and UCLA in Quadrant 1. UCLA, I think, is going to be very chalky on Friday. They are the highest favorited team that's on the 8-9 or 7-10 line. People like taking – I didn't do this pool last year, but I did it prior years in a 2-pick format, as in picking 2 games on Thursday and 2 games on Friday for the opening weekend. UCLA is going to be massively picked. And they're only a 6-point favorite. I mean, I don't know what that equates to, but 6-point favorites in basketball lose all the time. So UCLA is a pure fade, and they're not likely to make the Elite Eight, but they could very well lose in the first round. But Kansas is not losing in the first round. I sure hope not. I went to Kansas, but if they do, that's fine. They'll knock everybody out, but you still have value if you don't take Kansas and they win, as long as they were heavily picked, because all those people can't take them anymore. And that creates separation for you against that subgroup. So if a chalky team wins, that's not bad. As long as that team keeps winning, it's really good, because it's just as much as a loss if that team keeps winning for those people, because eventually they'll be boxed out or they have limited options on who they can pick.
You alluded to this before. Let's talk about structure a little bit and collisions and things like that. Like get into this a little more. I mean, I'll give you an example. So, like, you said that you might actually play teams that might play each other in the second rounds. Like, that's not something that I would usually do. And I thought about it, like, when I'm looking down here at this bottom left. Like, I talked about a couple of teams that I kind of liked here on Thursdays. Like UNC, I think is going to be a pretty decent play, and I think that St. Mary's is going to be a pretty decent play. And if I play both of them, for example, in that pool where you have to pick two teams, then you're probably going to need them both to lose. Well, maybe not, but I don't know. Like, would you consider, like, playing teams again in this year?
I'll tell you what.
Against each other,
I'm
like,
definitely doing. Quadrant 4. This is one that I'm definitely doing in my double picks pool. I'm not going to go into my outright advanced strategy. I don't want to give away what I'm doing. I don't want someone to duplicate it, because a bunch of people are going to be in this pool. It's a massive one. But I am definitely taking Michigan, Georgia, Texas Tech, and Alabama, and for one or two of my entries. And it's not as wild as you think. I mean, it limits your options. It means I can't take that one of those pink ones in quadrant 4. I can't pick Tennessee, Virginia, Kentucky, or Iowa State there, because then I would be boxing myself out. But I am going to do that. But I tested it out. And the way you do these tests when you do your picks, you have to work backwards. You got to make forwards and backwards. You got to make sure you're like, what are your options? You got to see, because when you do something like that, you have to jump over somewhere else. So, like, for pink, I would have to take quadrant 1.
Yeah.
There's nothing else. I mean, I would have to take quadrant 1 is going to be my pink game. That pink game is the Friday. It would like if I were to get through. So you can do these, and these things aren't as crazy as you think. So as long as you don't put yourself in a pickle. And actually, what it does do is it completely opens up one of the other regions when you do this. Now, if Michigan, Georgia, Texas Tech, or Alabama make the Final Four, well, I'm out or I'm boxed out.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's the way it goes, you know.
Scenarios that you play the pool.
But what this does,
so I'm gonna be looking for those worst ones, because what it does is it opens up an entire region to where you want the results to break down in such a way that knock a lot of people out or box a lot of people out, but you can just let it go and see what happens. And I know I like those, because I think Texas Tech and Alabama are going to be far less picked than some of the other 4 and 5 seeds. So that's why I gravitated toward that one.
It's a very unique way of thinking about it, and I'm sure that if you ran it through AI, it could do the calculations for you. But the idea is this. All right, it seems odd, right? but you're going to need the 4-team parlay anyway, right? Week 1, right? You can't advance without getting 4 wins. And if you get away with this, like you said, you now have like as max flexibility or who gives an F about what happens everywhere else as you can.
Remember, it's not about getting away with it. You only need them not to make the Final Four. They could.
No, I mean get away with it, meaning wins the first game. Like I'm saying, if you get that done, then what you have now created is a complete apathy to almost the entire rest of the country. You know what I mean? Like, because you've now touched nothing in any of the other, forgetting the other regions, like in any of the other sides, pretty much. You know, so again, it's definitely unorthodox, and I'm pretty sure that it doesn't win as often as some of the other strategies, but I guarantee you that when it does win, it wins a lot more. So
if anything, it's safer than what other I'm not going to call this a strategy, but in this format where you take 2 games per day for Thursday and Friday, the worst thing you can do is pick 1 game per quadrant. Very, very, very dangerous, unless you're specifically hitting up the 8, 9, and 7, 10 seeds. Because if you're doing 1 seeds, 2 seeds, even 4s and 5s, you put yourself at great risk of if those teams could make the Final Four. You almost would rather your own teams collide into each other, because then it guarantees that one of them is out, and because eventually you're going to need them to lose to someone else anyway. But if you create like 4 tree branches, you need those branches cut off. But I'm creating 1 branch with this strategy, and as long as that branch doesn't extend out to the Final Four, then I'm fine. But if you pick 1 in quadrant 1, 1 in quadrant 2, 1 in 3, 1 in 4, you have 4 branches that need to be clipped off before they get too long, before you have lost or you're boxed out. To put those concepts together. There's no sense of it until the results come in. The key is make your picks on Thursday. And then before you make your picks on Friday, look at the results on Thursday to see if you like that pick still. As an example, okay, so green is Thursday. All right, because I like my name. In quadrant 4, I put funny names for the 16 seeds. Yeah. So Michigan's playing repeat state. I put repeat because UMBC is in the playing game, so maybe they can do it again. So let's say Michigan loses on Thursday. Okay, well that changes the strategy for the Texas Tech how you approach Texas Tech and Alabama.
That's right.
They're both now have a very good chance of making
the Sweet 16. Right.
The elite game.
Yep.
I don't know if I froze in that.
You did a little bit, but that's okay. Let me try to relieve a little confusion here. So what I think a good way to summarize the last couple of points when it comes to geography is this: if you want, yeah, I hear you. You can't. Yeah, I hear you. You're good. Excellent. I hear you. What I think you need to accomplish is if you're going to go like full geography, like 1 east, west, south, north, whatever, is that you want to play the the highest seed possible, meaning like the 8 or the 7, something like that. Okay. This way you don't run the risk of colliding as much as if you played like the 4. I think if you played the 4 and you went for that chalky route, then you could go like geography and go like 1 in every slot, So I think that's the best way for me to kind of advise on that. I'm probably going to go. So here's what people are going to do. And this is, I don't think this is like bad play, but this is what people are going to do. They're going to play on day one, they're going to play Nebraska and I think Arkansas. Yeah. Nebraska and Arkansas, I think, will be the chalkiest play combo. And then on Friday, it will be Kansas and who's it going to be? Maybe Kansas, like you said, and UCLA, something like that. Yeah, but Kansas can't really pair with UCLA too well, but maybe people will do that. Who else could people play? They might play Texas Tech, Virginia. That's not terrible. Virginia people might play. So you want to try to avoid those combinations as best you can. Now, let me ask you something. I don't know if you're still here. Let me put you in. Oh, you're back. Sorry about that, Mike. You back?
Yeah.
Yeah. So here's a question I have. So we're not gonna have time to come and like do like an update after Thursday's games in time for Friday, really. But I think if we have time, I know I'm gonna do it. I don't know what your schedule is. I'm gonna probably go on later at night on Friday, like after the Friday results are in, before I put if I can, to like let people know what I think what I think of Saturday, because it's just, I don't know, say it's impossible. It's kind of foolhardy to plan for Saturday, until you know.
But it's not even worth considering. I mean, no one should lock in their Friday picks. I don't know when I froze. I'll get this figured out before NFL season, but the results of Thursday really determine what you do on Friday. If Michigan loses on Thursday, Texas Tech and Alabama aren't looking very good picks on Friday, because they have very strong chances now of making the Elite Eight, and that would strongly limit your options. That's not to say you shouldn't make them, but it should change your viewpoint on if you want to go that path. So it's definitely not even worth thinking about the Saturday picks yet, because even though the spreads are very big, one of these teams, not every 4 and 5 seed is going to lose. Win. They're not all going to win. The spreads are huge, but at least one of them are going to lose, and probably two, I think. And depending on which ones lose, that makes a big difference on, like, if Alabama loses, some people might say, "Ooh, I like taking Texas Tech this weekend." Well, I would say, yeah, it looks good, but I kind of like the idea of Texas Tech beating Michigan. That would be the way that I would look at that. So let me ask, think about your Saturday.
Who is? I'll ask you another way. Who is? This will be like our last thing. Who is the best team that you will pick this week? Like, are you going to pick any 1 seeds? You know what I mean? Like,
oh, yeah.
Who?
Absolutely.
You are. Okay.
You already know you should know which one I'm going to take.
Yeah.
I hinted at it.
Yeah.
I'm taking Florida for sure. I'm for sure taking Florida and more than 0. Because I think it's worth.
Yep. So I thought the content was pretty good. Your connection sucked, but we will fix that for either for our next stream or certainly for football season.
I'll be out of town this weekend, so I'll be in Reno. So
yeah. So if you want to listen, if I go on like late at night on Friday, if you wanted to, like, if you telegram me like any thoughts, I'll convey them across. But everybody, have fun with this. Don't, seriously, just like bracket pool stuff. Don't just play the obvious plays. It's the same as anything else. The same as DFS. It's the same as survivor pool stuff, regular. It's easy to come up with like the pure plays, but it's so easy that everybody's going to be doing it. I would take some chances, play some of these 60% winning chances team. Don't just play the Nebraska, Kansases, and Arkansas. You might survive a little bit longer, but it's still like an enormous parlay for you to win, and the parlay for you to win is just going to end up chopping anyway. So that would be my advice. A couple of promos here. You get in the Ship It Nation Discord. We could talk about stuff there. I also do stuff for Pater. You want to go into there. We have some good packages there as well. Follow me on X and all that good stuff. Whatever question you have, fire it off here. And that is pretty much it. Now, what is this? The March Madness channel for the fun bracket for a good cause. All this sounds good to me. And that's going to do it. Good luck, everybody, and have fun.